everyone, and welcome to the EdTech Podcast, the show about all perspectives on learning, innovation and technology in and out of the classroom. First up, a big thank you to all of you who sent birthday wishes this week. The existential crisis over getting older is just starting to recede. For many of you, the existential crisis is just beginning as you see history repeating itself in the EdTech arena as government and the EdTech industry get to grips with tackling some of the issues in the sector which have been pervasive for the past 3 or more decades. For those who saw my LinkedIn blog post on the UK Government EdTech Challenger workshop run by the Business and Industrial Strategy team and the Department for Education, don't forget you can pass on your thoughts for inclusion on the podcast at speakpipe.com/the EdTech Podcast, which is also free and available for anyone wishing to leave a comment or thought on other episodes. What else? Help! As the EdTech Podcast grows, I'm approaching various local universities for interns to help with editing, social media, business development and marketing so that I don't become a shell of my former self. If you know young, engaged people who see the value in immersing themselves in the dual worlds of EdTech and podcasting in return for responsibility, exposure and good standing in a fast-growth sector, please do feel free to connect us both. Events. Following previous live podcasts, the EdTech Podcast is launching a live series of podcast recording events, looking to tackle some of the issues around funding, accreditation, data and infrastructure, which are currently prohibitive to good innovation. I'm proactively on the hunt for unique venues and complementary sponsors for the series. For further information, contact the EdTech Podcast at gmail.com and more details are available in the show notes. In other news, don't forget if you're attending Digital Transformation, a new higher ed event in the UK, or South by Southwest Edu in the US, there are unique discount codes for both events in the show notes. You can also check out an EdTech Podcast Extra with South by Southwest Edu Exec Director Ron Reed on the podcast channel about his background in EdTech content, publishing and launching the show. And finally, for those listening in London, join us at EdSpace on the 2nd of March, where we will be looking back over education in Hackney with a live panel featuring the New Way Federation, Hackney Learning Trust, Ministry of Stories, Sam Labs and Rocket Fund. Link again in the show notes. And now, this week's episode on higher education, innovation and skills. This week's episode features recordings from the Education Innovation Conference, a one-day event hosted at the University of London during the week of BET and bringing together many mostly higher education professionals and government from the UK and internationally, with many attendees present from India and Africa. A big shout out to Pratik Dattani and his colleagues at the Economic Consulting Group who organised the event, who you will hear from at the beginning of the recording. In this episode, we hear from various perspectives. How does higher education address the fourth digital revolution? Is it adapting fast enough? How can technology address some of the challenges around teacher-student ratios? And how can we use practical education to reposition different geographies as skills destinations and reverse the dreaded brain drain? We hear from a number of amazing contributors, but I am saddened to admit that a recording fail with Andreas Schleicher, Director for Education and Skills at the OECD, means that his clip is less than a fifth of the original recording, which is ironic given one of his main messages is that many of the world's young educated people are overqualified for their roles with great degrees but unskilled in the proficiencies they require. I hope very much to catch Andrea on the circuit again to right the wrong, but his other messages were such that 1. The PISA tables are a snapshot only. 2. Funding is not the biggest influencer after $50,000 per student. And 3. Class sizes and class contact time is not the be-all and end-all, more so the quality of teachers and the time for them to prepare and continually develop breeds the best results. As I just scraped the millennial bracket, I could get all snowflake about this faux pas, but instead I'll embrace my inner grit and put it all down to growth mindset and a reminder to have 5 backup recordings in the future. That's all for now. Have a great week. If you're in the UK, enjoy the first sights of spring on its way. If you're in Australia, watch out for the crazy hailstorms. And if you're in Lincoln, marvellous work on the win against Burnley. Okay, so we're up bright and breezy and at the Education Innovation Conference at the University of London. And I'm delighted to be here with Pratik Dattani, Managing Director of the EPG Economic and Strategy Consulting Group. So good morning, Pratik.
Good morning.
What I was hoping to do this morning is just to get a sense of what the Education Innovation Conference is all about, how long it's been running, and what's the aim, really.
Yeah, so it's the third year that we've been running it. It's today at Senate House, the University of London. And the aim is really to look at where education, global education, might be headed in the next 5 to 10 years. So as a team, we've done quite a lot of education research for UNESCO, for a number of education foundations. Some of our work was presented at the World Economic Forum last year and at the UN General Assembly in 2016 as well. And that was very much looking at where the global education market could develop in a decade's time. So this is tried to address the same issues, but also looking at what the role of technology might be in enabling some of those things to happen.
That's very interesting. And so from some of those meetings, and obviously we had Davos last week, I think, what were the main findings, and what do you predict will be discussed here? I know that the Education World Forum as well was yesterday, and there was a lot of chat about what came out of the OECD reports and that kind of thing. So what do you predict?
Well, I think one of the main things is that teaching more teachers just doesn't cut it in terms of the world stage, because a teacher could only teach 50, 100, 200 people. The way of scaling that much more is to use technology. Whether it's e-learning, whether it's MOOCs, MOOCs plus something else, blended learning, whatever you want to call it. I think technology plays a key part, and today is very much about seeing what some of those innovations could look like. And it's really interesting, having done this a couple of times before, that the startups and the tech firms that exhibited and spoke at the conference 2 years ago, some of them have done remarkably well, and one of them is back here today, and others really haven't. And I'm minded by something a Vice-Chancellor of a British university said to me a few years ago, that, look, we may be a little bit more conservative and more risk-averse, but we're really a steward for the next 100 years for our organization. And that in education is really important, because you're a steward of a young person's life chances, effectively. EdTech is really exciting, but a lot of EdTech companies burn and crash quite quickly.
So making sure that there's continuity and it's not just a flash in the pan and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And highlighting who those winners are and where in the world their products might work best. So, for example, in the UK, the volume that you might get in terms of customers will be much lower, but the price point you'll be able to charge is much higher. Whereas in Africa and places like India, you're very much looking at bottom of the pyramid schemes where you're dealing with volume and a low price point. And
so I know you have a lot of delegates here today from across India and Africa. So from previous events that you've run, I mean, what do you think are some of the trends that are happening in those different regions as well?
So India has 1 million students graduating every year. Wow. So in higher education, there are about 25 million students. Literacy rates are triple today in India as to what they were just 35 years ago. With that context, it means that the need and the wish for really high quality education, even paying premium prices in some of the metro cities in India, the need for that is just going up. It's very common for parents to pay for tuition after school to make sure that their children get 90%, 95%, 99% to get into the best colleges and universities. So, but Indian students and parents tend to be very savvy. So they're very much looking at what's in it for them at the end. So will it be a higher job offer, a better job offer, the ability to work or study abroad? And the universities from the UK or the colleges from the UK that have really succeeded in India have been the ones that have adapted the model they've used here to make it relevant to those very savvy Indian customers.
In terms of your own role in education, what's kind of your career path into being here today?
I'm a great believer in serendipity and chance. So I'm here almost entirely by chance because I started life off as an investment banker at Goldman, then moved to Deloitte, then worked in litigation for a number of years, generally financial services litigation. And then I I just started thinking a lot more about education, invested in an EdTech company, realized that it was quite interesting, learned a lot about what works in the sector, what doesn't work in the sector, and then got a really great opportunity to work and lead a global team for a UNESCO project. And once that went live at the World Economic Forum in 2015, we started doing a lot more in this space.
And from your experience in investing in EdTech, would you have any advice to others considering the same thing? Are there any particular investments that you think are more savvy than others?
I think the one big thing I've noticed in London versus emerging markets like India is that in London, founders are very much looking for an exit from the first day onwards. Whereas for me, education is something where, like I said earlier, you're a steward for a child's life. So for me, a good investment is one that thinks about 25 years and the owner still being there at that time rather than thinking about a quick exit in 3 years. And that's the only way that you can build a sustainable company.
We're at the Education Innovation Conference at the University of London and just heard a really interesting panel, including Andreas Schleicher from the OECD and also indeed Justin Van Fleet from the International Commission on Financing Global Education Opportunity. And so I'm delighted to be here with Andreas Schleicher. So welcome. I know you've got a very busy schedule in London this week. What I wanted to delve into a little bit, I know you're speaking at the Education World Forum, the world's gathering of education ministers, and that was around accelerating into this fourth revolution idea. So can you tell us a little bit about what you discussed and indeed sort of some of the top level findings that we went through this morning?
Yeah, one of the hardest challenges for education is to better anticipate the evolution of the demand for skills. We know that the kind of things that are easy to teach, easy to test, have also become easy to digitize, automate, outsource. So putting a higher premium on creative skills.
Fantastic. So I'm now with Justin Van Fleet, who's Director of the International Commission on Financing Global Education Opportunity and Chief of Staff for the Office of the UN Special Envoy for Global Education. And Justin, you just told me you just started podcasting as well.
Yes, I did. So this is really exciting for me to be on a podcast. I can learn from you.
Well,
I've only done 2 interviews so far.
You've got my emails. Just to dive in, because I know you're also dashing across town. What were you talking about here, and what are kind of the main messages you're connecting with people about this week?
Great. This week is really important in London with the innovation conference we're at today, the Education World Forum. We're coming off the back of the World Economic Forum last week in Davos, and what we're looking at is ways that we can spread the message about the most recent report of the International Commission on Financing Global Education Opportunity and really make sure that the commissioners who have come together and put forward this new vision for education, the learning generation, are able to turn that report into actual action. And the one headline message that I sort of tell everyone, and I mentioned it today at the conference, is when you look across the world and we look at 2030 as the objective, the target year to get all young people in school and learning at the various levels from early childhood all the way up through post-secondary education, and we look at where we're headed, and if all of the foundations do everything they're doing, all of the donors do everything that they're doing, all the countries do everything they're currently doing in terms of the reforms and investments they're making, by 2030 there'll be 1.6 billion young people in the world, and over half of those young people, 825 million, will not have the basic skills needed to enter the workforce. 200 million will not be at school, another 400 million won't have basic primary school skills, and then another 200 million won't have basic secondary skills. So we're facing an alarming crisis, and the important piece that we're really trying to put out there from the Commission is that there is an alternative pathway. There is this vision of a learning generation, and if all countries look across at what other countries are doing, the top 25% of the fastest improvers in their income bracket and divided up by sectors, early childhood, primary, secondary, we could really make significant progress in one generation, where low-income countries today could rise to the levels of upper middle-income countries by 2030 or 2040 at the latest in some cases.
And talking about finance, I mean, are there particular recommendations on where or how to spend that money as well?
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting piece is we've looked at how much this will cost. Currently today in low-income and middle-income countries, we spend $1.2 trillion in education, and we'll need to scale it up to $3 trillion by 2030. The interesting fact is that 97% of the financing can come from countries themselves, from governments themselves. This plan can be 97% financed by domestic resources. This is based on increased tax capacity, increased growth rates, and investments that countries have made in other sectors. And so we're not asking for anything sort of above the realm of possibility, but you still need this 3% from the international community, and this amounts to about $89 billion. And
I remember in your presentation, so you said, let's look at the equivalent, such as healthcare, where actually, this is money that could be raised. We're not asking for so much. If we look at equivalent sectors or industries, in terms of where that's spent, is it spending on extra teachers? Is it spending on tech? How's that split out?
And it's really across the board, and the Commission's calling for reforms in education systems so that we know that money is being used to the best effect possible to achieve learning outcomes, to achieve inclusion of young people. And to that end, the Commission, in one of its first recommendations around systems performance, acknowledges there's not a one-size-fits-all. There's not a silver bullet. Every country has their own challenges that they need to overcome, and they also have their own advantages that they can harness and take advantage of. And when we look at the various types of interventions, we've looked at which interventions have benefits on learning, which types of interventions have benefits on bringing young people into the classrooms, how much do they cost relative to one another, and we're recommending that countries really take a look at what works, what evidence we have around it, and pick a basket of interventions that can help support and bolster their education systems. Some have challenges around infrastructure, others may have challenges around preparing young people to learn, around health, nutrition, and those types of co-investments, whereas others it's around teacher quality and supporting and training teachers and making sure they have the professional development they need. So there's a whole host of interventions that can deal with what countries are facing, but the inspiring part of this is that it can be done, it is being done in other countries, and if we can learn from other countries and make those investments, we really can achieve the learning generation. Back
at Education Innovation Conference, and I'm delighted to be here with Professor Mamo Mucci, who's Research Chair in Innovation Studies at SXSWedu University of Technology. And the best thing is we're both ex-Sussex University peeps.
Yes. Oh, that's
so
right.
me also, yeah.
That's lovely.
And in fact, I bumped into an ex-lecturer of mine here.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Also he used to be at University of Sussex and now is at University of East Anglia. So
yes.
yeah, I enjoyed my time there. Did you?
Yeah,
also?
I did. I had a great time.
Yeah.
And I had, to be honest with you, I had the best supervisor.
Okay.
He was a British. His name was Christopher Freeman.
Okay.
To be honest with you, he's the best human being I've ever met in my entire life.
That's such
honestly,
a nice thing
he
to
was
say.
amazing. He was incredible. He was totally ego-free, very helpful, and like a father to me. I mean, he was caring totally.
Yeah.
You would not believe. I'm just amazed that there are people like that in this world.
And do you think that's rubbed off on how you interact with your students?
I try. I cannot be like him. I try, but to learn from what he did. But it's difficult to be like him.
And do you stay in contact or?
No, he's passed away now.
Okay, yeah.
Unfortunately. But I keep in touch with his children. His son, one of his sons is Alan Freeman. Yeah, he's in Canada now. I teach and we're working on putting his legacy, and we have something called GlobalX, the Global Network on Economics of Innovation, Learning Competence Building, and it's actually it's like putting his name. We have also a Freeman lecture. We even do it in India, everywhere here. We do about him. We keep in touch. Everybody is inspired, not only me, lots of people across the world.
Yeah, I need to dig into that a bit, by the sounds of it.
So I hope all the British people will be like him.
I'm not sure what level. I need to push a bit harder.
No, it was just amazing. It's incredible.
So if I understand correctly, I think you're launching something exciting here.
We started something called Pan-African Talent Initiative. And our idea was, why is Africa always a talent drain zone of the world, a talent Sahara of the world? It should be a Sahara green zone of the world. So we said it should not be a departure point for talent. It should be a destination point for talent. So then we said, how should we rebrand Africa from its current negative brand to a positive one. So we thought of creating this Africa Talent Hub. And it's a company we wanted to create, which is non-profit. It's not charity. It's neither charity nor profit commerce, but it's something in between. It's called a community interest company, and we are registering it with Barclays Bank, and we are thinking of attracting a huge amount of resources to try to see if we could actually generate a new type of educated graduates. You remember when graduates, they get certificates, they get degrees, and they may not get jobs.
So that's what we heard about earlier.
Yes. So what we should do is we should create change makers, game changers, job creators, not job seekers. How do we do that? And how do we then bring in innovation and entrepreneurship? And how do we actually do it as they graduate? So by the time they finish, they actually can also have their own startups, their own businesses, their own anything they wanted to do in terms of activity. That it's not just an activity for them, but at least for a few other people too.
And so the idea,
how would they do that? That's the idea.
It's quite entrepreneurial and also sort of developing that ecosystem to make that possible.
Right. Yeah.
And so who are you looking to partner with to establish this?
I mean, in terms of partnership now, we have now a board.
Yeah.
And in the board, we have from Britain we have people, from India we have people, from Africa we have people, from America we are seeking some people to join us. So we want to make it global. We don't want to make it like Africans doing it themselves.
Yes.
But we want it to be a global effort so that everyone is engaged and they support the project more than anything else. That's what we want to do. So we want everyone to be included. It will be a humane, global, caring, sharing project.
And that will be based out of the university as well?
The main thing we wanted to do is we want to reach the entire Africa, but we can't do it just like that. We have to do it step by step. So we thought the best thing is to do a pilot. So in the pilot, the university where I am, it's called Swan University of Technology, and I work with industrial engineers and the engineering groups. And they have been in contact with them, and the research and innovation group. We're now discussing to see if we could construct a memorandum of understanding between the new talent hub, community interest company, and the university to see if we could do a very, really clear and practical incubation support. Giving awards to those people who actually presented very good practical proposals, students, and rely from the students from that university, and see if they could do it. Then we can use this and showcase it, and then see we can then go step by step to different parts of Africa. That's our idea. Interesting.
And then with that second phase, would those also be out of universities?
Initially, we should start with universities.
Yeah.
And later, as we build up, we monitor and evaluate what we do. And eventually, also we get on, if our resource base becomes stronger, we can approach also, we can make it wider to other communities too. We can open it up also to other communities. But that would be step by step. We shouldn't do it at the same time.
One step at a time. And then,
one step at a time. Yeah, thank you.
And then the first phase, is that particularly focused on EdTech? So is it education solution problem solving?
Mainly it is, you could call it EdTech, but it's mainly the students will do engineering, for example, industrial engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and they will set a proposal of an idea they have to solve a problem, for example, in a community. It could be any related to health, it could be service, anything. Then they come with ideas. We then assign mentors and the mentors look at it. Then it gets evaluated by an independent committee. When that happens, then from the seed money, we give them backing. And also there is this African Entrepreneurship Award, and some of them can also join the award.
Yes.
And from the award, they might even get resources so they can actually set it up. Our idea is that if they set it up, it mustn't just be for them, for the one person. Minimum, at least, they should involve a number of people. So it must be a team.
Yes.
And also they need to build friendships. It's also changing the whole education. In education, when you graduate, you get a certificate. You get a degree. And that's how it has been like that. Mm-hmm. Now we want to make it, actually, it's not good to regurgitate what your teacher told you. It's actually you need to create. You need to invent. Mm-hmm. You need to actually broaden the frontier. And in the real world, also relate what you know from the academic world to the real world. Interact, integrate, and make it practical. And productive and useful and helpful to everyone. That's mainly the idea.
It's really interesting because I think a number of universities now are starting to do these kind of initiatives. So
yes.
I remember I interviewed a professor from MIT.
Yes.
And I can't remember if it's Mobius, their particular initiative there, but the idea that by the time you've graduated, not only do you have this signaler to the market, but that you do already have experience of what's it like trying to broker relationships in a company, or develop your skills, or solve a problem, or get backing and useful things that, actually as soon as you step out the door, you could apply them straight away.
Absolutely.
And what about technology as a role in this whole project? But also, obviously, that's in terms of innovation studies, and we're talking about technology and learning here. How does that apply within the context of what your project is?
Yeah, I think technology is critical, of course. Now we live in the digital age. Mm-hmm. We live in what's called the fourth industrial revolution. Mm-hmm. We have a cyber world now, exponential technology. We call it exponential technology and so on. So a lot of the young people, of course, are engaged in this. So some of the work they do will always be digital, of course. I mean, that nanotechnology, quantum computing, many of these things, robotics, alternative energy, all these ideas that we have to change the world and manage it better also. We don't even know sometimes, we can't say all technology is good. It can also be negative. So we need to also know how to evaluate and see the consequences, the impact it has now. We have climate change, many things like that. So we'll definitely, when they do these proposals, when we do the evaluation, when we do the mentoring, we actually see the quality of the technology and the consequences, the impact. Everything has to be done, evaluated, and then accepted or rejected based on also the technical evaluation of the technology they do.
And what are the big educational problems in South Africa that need solving? So if we think about contextualizing, I always like to ask people, what educational problems are you solving if I'm talking to EdTech startups or blue chips? And it's just quite interesting for people thinking about, if they were going to collaborate on this project, like in a local context, what are the educational issues in South Africa?
There's a serious issue to deal with. A lot of the young people saying that they don't have enough money to pay for education. They want free education. Remember, there's been protests. You've seen about that. I think the education system is like, in some cases, it's like Europe and America. There's the top universities that were built during the apartheid time, and they're still high quality universities. But then the new ones, you see, the emerging and all the different universities that were set up, they were divided. Okay. So it's integrating that university, making it similar is not easy. Yeah. So, and there is still a challenge of the quality of education and so on. Recently, there was a very interesting article in The Economist. You should read it.
Is that the one about lifelong learning?
That's right. It was that.
It had the men growing, the evolution of man on the cover.
That's that one, and then there was where Theresa May was in it. I don't know.
Okay.
And there was page 27 too. You should read it about the South African education. It's amazing what they wrote.
Yeah.
It's just the problem of the young people and just getting into education, how difficult it is for a number of people. It's not the quality. The overall quality is, I mean, like, I don't see any difference from I have taught across the world. I mean, in America, in Europe, England, everywhere across the world. I have gone. I mean, one of my previous students is he's from England. Now he's a professor.
Yeah,
Jonathan Subset.
We give him a shout out on the.
I think you should put his name in this podcast.
I shall.
Then I'm bragging.
And then it'll be like, what did he say?
I met him in Sussex. He did his degree in Sussex. I met him, and he told me he's a professor. And I said, look. And then he just, yes, he's my mentor, he said. He did acknowledge. So nice. He didn't deny me.
How does it make you feel when you find out one of your students is a professor?
It's extremely, you would not believe it. That's the happiest. You see, a lot of people may be happy when they get houses, money. I'm more happy when I meet people like you and you are doing wonderful things. That makes me happy. That's in my heart.
Connections, yeah.
No, honestly, people are the most important.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't hurt people. We should support them.
Yeah.
And when they become professors,
this is why I love what I do,
happy.
because I get to spend all day just chatting to really interesting people. And it's brilliant. And when the best thing is at some point I'll be listening back to this and I'll be cutting out all the ums and ahs, apart from this one because I did it on purpose. And even listening back to it, it's like it makes you feel a certain way. It's really good.
But it's nice talking to you, and you showed me your lovely child. Yeah, I'm so happy, and I asked that question first.
Yeah. So, where did we get to?
No, but the one important point I didn't mention is the key thing about why this project is important is if you see the education system we have. Mm-hmm. Education is not just a preparation for life. Education is life. Yeah. Sincerely, I mean, like water and food is a human right. Education is also a right. Almost all of us need to be educated. Mm-hmm. Even if the education is bad, we should learn it. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you. And so almost universally, this must be something we should all do. Our problem is, even when we learn it, you graduate and you don't get jobs. Mm. And even there are other companies and others that seek graduates, they don't find them. So you have even in South Africa, they have this challenge.
I know
thousands that are graduates that do not have jobs, but even companies that want to employ them, they do not find them. So this mismatch, skills mismatch, should be a real match. And we can be a very good, this hub we are creating can actually be generating a new approach where the connections can also be made.
I remember even... It's probably 5 or 6 years ago now, looking at retail in South Africa, and you've got all of these international brands, so retail and banking, that are launching there, and exactly the same thing. They're sort of talking about the skills gap and how to close that, and trying to employ people locally and so on.
That's right. Have a problem. I mean, a serious challenge across Africa.
And so the percentages around private education. So I remember here they mentioned, I think in the UK it's 7% is private education, and in India it's 40%. Yeah. You know, we're talking about having the difficulty of actually accessing the education in the first place. Yeah. I just wondered what's the percentage, roughly speaking, around private? Is that part of the reason because it's, you know, the quality education is private, or is there quite decent state education? Or
I think it's mainly the education. When they talk about it in South Africa, they mainly talk about the public education. Yeah. I hardly hear private education being mentioned. Yeah. Literally, except private education is mainly in the elementary school and secondary school, kindergarten, all these things. They are private things. But when it comes to universities, it's mainly the key universities that we have here, Oxford, Cambridge, and so on. All the 8 major universities, you know, on the league. Yeah? Yes, yeah. You just have like that. You have University of Cape Town, Witwatersrand University, University of Pretoria. Yeah. I mean, University of Johannesburg. This kind of things. This is the kind of thing you hear more. And the issues is how do you get the students who are not able or who do not have the capability in terms of
accessing in the first point.
Tuitions on. How do we get them? And that's the debate in South Africa. Mainly that's the main debate in the media, and you see it also everywhere. And that's what you see more.
Yeah. And who else are you here to connect with this week?
Almost everyone here. I mean, they came from everywhere.
Yeah,
so it's very, very good.
Yeah.
Now, after I talk, I think all the Indians I could talk to, all the British here. I mean, and my board members are also here. There's Stephen Little is a professor at University of Open University.
Okay,
they are here.
Interesting.
They're all here. So it's a very good opportunity, and I met you. Yeah.
And if people want to connect with you, you're on Twitter at Africa Talent Hub.
Yeah. We have a Talent Hub, and we'll have our website is finishing, and our also bank will be put, and I hope donations also can. I mean, it will be open also to donations. Not just to. We'll reach people with donations. We'll do practical things. We'll do examples, and we'll showcase them. And we'll interact and collaborate and see if we could build it up as a new way by which education could be seen in a very positive light.
That's very good.
It's not just educating people and getting degrees.
Yeah.
It's actually making something useful for society for other people. That's the main thing. That's what we want to do.
Thank you very much, Mamo.
Thank you too. Nice seeing you.
Seeing as this is hosted at the University of London, I'm delighted to speak to Michael Kerrison, who's Director of Educational Innovation and Development at the University of London. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
I mean, we heard here earlier on from Andreas Schleicher from the OECD around this idea of perhaps degrees as signallers versus skills. I just wondered what your thoughts were on higher education as a sector innovating as chase towards skills increases in its velocity, if we look at it like that, how the higher education sector is adapted. Will it become more skills-based, or do you think that'd be quite staunch on, education for education's sake?
That's a very interesting and very complex question, because there's an immense amount that we're still understanding about the modern world in terms of how students learn with the new technologies, with the digital competencies that they've got. You combine that with the world of work, which is changing immensely in terms of the number of jobs that we might expect the generation coming through from school now to undertake, the different skill sets that they need in order to adapt and become flexible in the workforce. And the kind of skills that, frankly, are almost extinct in terms of certain elements of manufacturing that have been moved through technical advance into areas that students of our generation would have expected to have as significant scale jobs available for them. So we've got a generation in transit who are needing to be retrained and reskilled. We've got a digital generation coming through who need to be engaged with through modern media, through modern technologies. And in all of it, that needs to be meaningful learning, both in terms of practical skills, but also, as we'd say here, as a pillar of higher education for 158 years, that needs to have that critical thinking, the reflective practice, and understanding the world around us in a much more conceptual way, but equally something that can be applied. And so if I give you an example of a recent program that we've launched last year, it's an MSc in professional accountancy, and it's the world's first integrated masters with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. And we've actually got a significant number of members and affiliates, over 2,000 enrolled on that program in the last year. And that is working with an integration of a very applied subject as accountancy, that the professional body require technical skills to be acquired, but also blending that with critical thinking in the UCL collaborative partners who we work with in delivering that program. And we combine that into a strategic project, which is actually the first version has just been completed by 1,000 students who did the project in the last session. And that is about running effectively an airline, and running that in a simulated way where you make decisions about the airport itself, which airlines are allowed into the airport, whether you want to have retail space or whether you want to have extra services, whether you have restaurants in the airport, what customers that you're bringing together. So bringing strategy alongside financial discipline, strategic decision making in an artificial intelligence way. So that's been great and fun, but equally is a way that we can really harness the points that you mentioned, which is the skills that are needed, which is critical thinking and reflection alongside the very technical needs.
And so I noticed in your presentation slides, you also talking about MOOCs, and what else did you cover off in your presentation today?
So MOOCs give us we've been around for 158 years, so what I covered was in that time, the penny post was a massive change for us because we had students even in the UK who weren't able to send items of coursework in, so formative assessment was not really possible without an affordable postal service and reliable one. So the penny post meant that they could send them in to tutors, and tutors send the feedback in. We think that's pretty primitive now, but that was massive. And steam engines meant that our exam centres around the world could actually get the exams back to us within a reasonable timescale. We've had a 150th anniversary of our first overseas centre in Mauritius just a few years ago, and all of that has now shifted dramatically in recent years in having to harness new innovations and technologies which have moved and obviously made a lot of those technological advances obsolete. So the challenge for the university has been to harness that, to make the changes that are needed, also to bring the academics along, because as I say, without the academic capital understanding that world around us and how they can most engage in an interactive way with the modern student, none of this would be possible. So we've got to bring them on that journey, train them up so that they're equipped for it. MOOCs has been a great fun. We've had over 29 MOOCs, 1.2 million enrolments. We've learned a lot. We've had the instructors drawn from 10 different member institutions of the university, London Business School, School of Oriental African Studies, and they've really tried things out, which has been great because they're free and it enables them to actually do something that they might not want to try in the classroom because they've got structure and content to complete. So that has actually been a great learning curve over the last few years for some of the instructors and ways in which we can actually bring them on this journey.
And is it your role, you mentioned bringing the academics on the journey. So I interviewed some guys down at the University of Southampton, and I was talking about their iChamps initiative, where they have students that work with the academics to tell them about the new technologies that they could be using. I didn't know if it was part of your role to bring those academics on board, or if you have a team, or what the kind of structure is there to help that process.
I very much work with the team on that, very much so. It is a big job because over 50,000 students, over 100 programs, we're talking thousands of modules and individual courses of study spanning from divinity through to malicious software at postgraduate level, so right across the breadth of what we offer here in London, which is fantastic, but clearly have different challenges in how the academics can actually utilise the digital space. So yes, it's very much our team that work with the on-campus academics to try to bring them into this online and flexible world and try to get them to think creatively about their programme. And of course the benefit for them is, having worked with us in our instructional design and learning solutions team here, who work within my directorate, they can then take that content and use it on campus in the way that they want to. So actually it's a real win-win-win when it works well and they can invest their time. They actually get the payoff in their classroom where they can work with students virtually alongside the classroom sessions.
I know you have, just around the corner here, you've got the co-sector and the Bloom side of things. Is that part of what you do, or do you guys work quite separately?
We do, although we are one University of London, so they are part of our central hub here. And for example, the careers group that work in there and do excellent work for all of the tens of thousands of students who need careers advice here in Bloomsbury and within the catchment of our member institutions through London. We got them to do a MOOC, and it was actually the 7th largest session-based MOOC at the time, with over 160,000 students doing it. I mean, it was on how to prepare yourself for interview, for preparing your CV, what kind of skills that you can emphasise in putting yourself forward for the world of work, which a lot of students don't always think about, particularly undergraduate.
That's really interesting, because when I was in the interview with the iChamps, that's exactly what we ended up spending quite a lot of time talking about, is those programmes of documenting the work that you're doing whilst you're doing your degree, and making sure that that paves you well for the world of work afterwards. So,
yes. And what I said earlier on, there are better equipped minds than mine to work out just how many jobs we might expect our graduates to be doing over their lifetime. It's sometimes in the region of 2 to 3 times what my generation would have been expecting.
I think they said here, didn't they, we won't be having 5 jobs, we'll have 5 careers.
We've also found that a lot of the students doing our MOOCs will pay for the certification. They put those up on LinkedIn just to emphasise that they've been either doing professional development or career-based work. So, that is the world that we're in, and the more that students can really polish and monitor their development through formal education and otherwise, we think we've got to support that market.
And do you have 5 top resources or top tech tools that you recommend?
Well, that's probably for one of my technical teams. As I said in the session just now, I'm hanging on by my fingernails in terms of all the developments and all the tech changes and shifts that are happening. I mean, we also use Moodle, which is very clunky as a VLE, but what we've done is to use a range of plugins and areas that we feel are tools that the students can use. So if I give you some tools that we think are very powerful and important, a single source publishing tool which actually takes all of the content, assessments, learning outcomes of the modules and courses that we do and basically meta tags those, which basically means that each of the learning outcomes has a passage of a chapter or a journal, and that therefore we can dynamically provide feedback to students with distractors in formative assessment that say, well, actually we know where you've gone wrong there, and we position them with the right area diagrams or text that will answer that. That is a very powerful tool as long as you've worked with the instructor to design that in from the start. So that's a really important area of our work at the moment, with a lot of content that we obviously nurture and curate across the piece. We also have 97 million artifacts in our online library. There are 10 floors above us with, dare I say, dead trees, some unkind people will say, but some wonderful manuscripts, in fact, old folios of William Shakespeare.
That's right, yeah. No, I know all about them.
So we do have a significant e-resource that we use, and we link in with all of the development of materials online. And so the other tools that we've linked to those elements are a self-assessment tool, which basically students can see exactly where they're at any point in their course against the learning outcomes, because the assessment that they've done, the reflective logs that they do, all feed back in to whether they've achieved learning outcomes. So it can actually enable a student to put together their own assessment based on the areas that they've diagnosed a week. So that's a really powerful tool which leads us into the world of adaptive learning when we've refined, just how students get lost along the way. So those are important tools for us. Planners, time management is incredibly important for all of us, but for online learners in particular. So we have dynamic online tools where students can manage their time and also see exactly where they are. So each topic is 10 hours. And therefore, they should know whether they're ahead, behind, or on target for where they want to be. These are very practical tools, not necessarily cutting edge, but nonetheless very scalable and sustainable for our students.
And who else did you connect with here today? Did you meet some interesting people?
So yes, some colleagues from India, and also at the last session with Donald, I've heard a number of times, Donald Clark, and he's always a very interesting speaker and has gone through different iterations in his life space of learning technologies. So he's always interesting to hear what some of the cutting edge EdTech things are. And Julie from the University of Derby, who we know about, who obviously are in the online space as well, and have similar challenges to us. So it's always useful to have a bit of empathetic support from a fellow academic.
It's very convenient here as well.
Yes, yeah. But of course, you will know, I hope, if you've done your background, that this is where the poster of Keep Calm was originally invented.
Well, I did know that George Orwell once worked here, and he
in the
based
Ministry of
room
Information.
101 on.
Well,
my husband actually works here, so.
Does he really? Well, is it the one? There is some rumour that the 101 was also in the old BBC television. He used to go to committees there.
He's good at spinning a yarn.
And that was the one. So 101 has got its mythical status.
Yeah.
But the Keep Calm was invented in 1939 in the Ministry of Information based here, of which Orwell was there.
There you go.
And so he, that was where it all came from.
Well, you seem very calm, so that's good. It's rubbed off.
I think it's the only thing we can do with so many things changing around us.
So I'm here with Jakob or Yaki Dayan, who's founder and CEO of EdTech Israel. So welcome, Yaki.
Glad to be here.
So we were just talking previously about EdTech Israel and what it is exactly that you do.
For the Israeli companies, EdTech Israel is like the professional society of all the EdTech startups and companies that are doing education technologies stuff in Israel. Internationally, we are trying to represent the Israeli market to create investment opportunities, bridge on business development side, and to, I would say, export what we have in Israel to other markets around the world. We are looking in Israel on a snapshot of what we have today. So it's everything from companies that already exist like 15, 20 years that are doing things that coming from the old, I would say, e-learning age, and some of them that only started a couple of years ago and try to do things which are top-notch on technology. So it's a mixed bag. I mean, it's different. It's a lot of diversified solutions coming from electrified Lego bricks on one hand that just raised like $2 million on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, to companies that are doing online virtual schools, already serving more than 15,000 students online and doing so many millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, quite a breadth of different offerings then. In terms of the education landscape in Israel, how would you describe that? Is it mostly public, private? Are the companies that are members of yours, are they all looking to export, or is there enough business to go around in?
That's interesting because there is no business in Israel. The local market is 80% in Hebrew, and it's dominated by one or two companies, and none of the Israeli startups, when they start, they never look at the Israeli market. They always look on international markets. And because the US market is very saturated, many of them are looking for other markets like Brazil, India, Europe, and some other parts of the world. Interestingly, there are many companies that have sometimes almost 30 or 35% of their customers coming from the Emirates or Saudi Arabia or this kind of Arabic places, and it's not necessarily coming from, let's say, US markets, at least not for the Israeli companies.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm finding that more and more that startups, certainly, they're sort of looking at the US and they're sort of thinking, it's so busy there, and so they're exploring other markets to go into.
Well, in Israel, many startups, especially in other sectors, they have like an autopilot. They are programmed to go immediately after Israel, to go after the American market, maybe also move their HQ to the States and to the Silicon Valley or whatever. That's not the case in education. In education, it's a totally different game. It's not the same level of investments that we can see in other sectors. It is not an easy sector to be with and to be in. So it's not the same like IoT or cyber or defense or maybe or telecom, that all of those are generating lots of attraction. Education is different. And I think that for Israeli companies, it's almost a fact that they understand that they cannot export content, they cannot export services. So the only thing that they can do is actually to try to focus on good technology.
And it's interesting because I know that we both came from a telecoms background, so me more in terms of documenting that, so working at Informa. But I suppose what it was that we were talking about is people's recognition or not of EdTech as a sort of tangible thing, because it depends on how you value that. So you're looking at it from a social impact point of view, are you looking at it from a monetary point of view? And if you look at sort of telecoms versus EdTech's still a very nascent market, and so that's something that people are grappling with, I think.
I try to look at it from the very optimistic way. I try to look at it from the social impact or the global impact opportunity. If we just look at the simple ROI, I would say that today we have in Israel about 120, 140 Israeli EdTech companies. Maybe only 20% of them are actually exporting or making revenues, and in total doing no more than 70 to 80 million US dollars. So definitely, if you compare this to other sectors in Israel, it's not doing much in terms of export. However, if you try to look at education in a more broad sense, there are a lot of things that are being developed in Israel that can be adopted to the education sector. Not many people know, for example, that the HoloLens were developed in Israel by the Microsoft team in Israel. So there has been a lot of development done in Israel, and one of the things that EdTech Israel is trying to do is to generate awareness to the needs of global education and to connect entrepreneurs in Israel, not only with the things that we have right now, not only with the snapshot of what we have at the moment, but also to encourage them to deal with the, I would say, more pressing problems of the world, of the global education market, and try to divert innovation and resources from whatever projects that they are working today into things that can go into the education landscape.
You mentioned sort of your role as ambassador for that project, if you will.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? I mean, which events will you be attending this year?
First, EdTech Israel started also an international summit in Israel, Israel EdTech Summit. The first one was in June, a few months ago. Attracted about 600 attendees, 66 speakers from all around the world, and 48 Israeli EdTech companies presented at the conference what they have to offer. And we were discussing in this summit anything from social investments in education to VC investments to the role or to the future of STEM education and so forth. And this actually is the first platform that we have done to create a place for Israeli startups to communicate and to converse with entrepreneurs and opinion leaders and with investors from around the world. The second summit is expected to be this June, the 4th and the 5th of June in Tel Aviv. And we are expecting for this summit to see delegations coming from the UK, from India, definitely from China. We had last time summit, we had like 25 people came all the way from China, and we expect about the same amount of people to attend also at this summit. And for us, the summit is an opportunity to bring to the Israeli entrepreneurs also people like we've met today, the EAC, that voice their opinion about the importance of education and the need for educational technologies in places like India, in Africa, in some other regions. And this conversation, I believe, is the right way to engage more entrepreneurs and more resources into opportunities that can be of help to other places around the globe.
What about on Twitter? Can people connect with you there? Are you?
Yes, EdTech Israel.
Okay. Cool.
So people can connect to us over there, and definitely I'm expected to be at the SUGSV in May, and of course in June, the second Israeli EdTech Summit.
There you go. So that's it. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And enjoy BET this week.
Thanks a lot.
Now I am here with Raman Talwar from the organisation Simulanis, and Raman was part of the first cohort for EduGuild, the accelerator incubator in... where is the EduGuild based?
It's in Pune,
Okay.
which is near the... It's near the financial capital of India, which is Mumbai.
Okay.
It's just a couple of hours drive from Mumbai.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful city, much better than Mumbai. I like it better than Mumbai.
Okay, why is that? Just a little bit more chilled?
The roads are better. The crowd's not as much.
Yeah.
The weather is 1,000 times better.
Oh, really?
Because Mumbai is near the coast and it's humid and hot. Pune is exactly the opposite. It's all the year round. It's good weather.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it slightly cooler?
Slightly cooler, yeah.
Is it higher up?
No,
Is that why?
it's higher up and it's surrounded by hills from four sides. So kind of, what goes around stays inside there.
Okay, so it's like it's a bit like Las Vegas.
Yes, exactly.
What happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas.
Stays in Vegas, very much like that.
And so in terms of Simulanis, and actually before we start that, so I kind of overheard your conversation before, and I think what you were talking about was disparaging this idea that, if you're developing things in India, that it's cheap, and that's a fallacy. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, very much. I think, it's a global mindset that whenever things come down to India, then they got to be cheap, low quality, blah, 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 X, Y, Z, so many things around it. I personally don't believe that. I think India is as much global as any other country now, really. And the prices, the rates, the costs are pretty much, very much similar as compared to what the global prices are. And I think that's down to the fact that the average Indian is so globalized now.
Yeah.
And out of 10 probably people working in a corporate, you would have 8 of them who would have had global educations, who would have had a global experience. So when you've had that sort of experience, there is price value attached to your talent, and the same applies to pretty much everything which you end up doing. So I think that's pretty much not the case. So even if we need to hire good talent, we have to shell out decent amounts of money, which is kind of along the same level as compared to some of the countries, the more advanced countries and developed countries. So
and you also said that if you want to look at costs, come to, like Delhi is that's
indeed.
Kind of one of the most comparable.
So Delhi and Mumbai, like I'm talking about Mumbai, real estate prices in Mumbai. If you want to set up an office somewhere around the areas where it's very expensive, of course it's very expensive. Some of the most pricey real estate you can have there, and the same applies to Delhi. It's not cheap, and it compares and rivals with some of the most pricey locations across the world. And some of them are, if you look at the top 10 most priciest real estates available in the world, I think Delhi would also have, Delhi and Mumbai would be one of them in the lists. Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting to get your perspective as well. Whereabouts in India are you from?
Delhi,
okay,
the capital,
so when I've been interviewing people here, especially from the higher education side of things, and obviously Brexit comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And obviously people are now looking, if you think about EdTech companies, thinking about exporting, and, suddenly Europe is not, the number one first mind choice, or people trying to work out where it's going to go next. From your conversations in Delhi, are people also looking the other way around thinking this could be an opportunity for us, or is it not really that relevant a conversation?
Not really as of now, I think, since things are going to take shape in the next couple of years, I would say. Then we can probably see much more of an impact from that side, especially with Brexit is concerned. But
and generally speaking, from your experience with other companies that have come out of EduGuild, are they looking to export, and which kind of countries are they looking to?
See, I've had a connect with the UK. I've studied 4 years at Manchester, so that's a bit of a connect I have. Yeah. I worked here for a couple of years as well. I worked there in Cheshire and Hull with pharma manufacturing companies.
City of culture.
Yeah, so I think if you talk about my company's vision, I think yes, we certainly want to export to the UK and have bilateral trade ties as well. Probably support some of the companies here, and then probably help them to get things done faster, cheaper. For me personally as well, I think it's just because of the fact that yes, in some of the areas like pharmaceuticals and life sciences, and the industrial training aspect, which we are also trying to kind of have a forte in India. we feel that there's a cutting edge of research which happens here, which can't be matched really, let's be honest about as compared to what India can do right now. So I certainly feel as a company that UK is important and central to our plans. That's why I think part of the reason why I'm also here is to kind of extend talks and probably set up an office in Manchester and see how we can make that a global office for our business development as well as for R&D and get all those benefits. And I think for me, this is more of a natural choice. But for other companies, I think I don't really know, especially with the Brexit, I think which you mentioned, it may be inclined more towards the US, but with the things happening in the US now, I think that's also probably going to change. So we can expect a lot of action happening. I think especially companies working in the food technology domain, like in India, the startup scene in India is pretty good now. They might want to explore such markets as well, where the access to technology and the cultures are so intermingled together that it becomes an easier market for them to sell their things at. So I think I can see that happening. And of course, with us, one of the prime reasons to come over here would be, of course, the leveraging the innovation happening around here.
And so tell me about Similaris, isn't it?
Yes, Similaris, yeah.
So what exactly are you doing?
So we develop virtual reality content for industrial training, pretty much in different industries. Right now we're focusing on the pharmaceutical sector, clearly because I've got an experience in that field, and that's why I'm doing that. Eventually we plan to go on to other sectors such as oil and gas, automotive, electronics, chemicals, any industry which has a very strong focus on health and safety. And I think which better country than England or the UK for health and safety. I think having studied here, I think I pretty much know the emphasis on HSE here. So I think that's where we want to set ourselves in. And eventually we want to also work with universities. We have done that in the past as part of our work earlier, in which we are creating virtual reality laboratories so that students can get a better experience and immersive experience of learning things. Yeah. And the USP of all our applications is that of course, they're technology agnostic, so technology platform agnostic. So you can have them on computers, your mobiles, your VR hardware, internet, off the internet. You can also, basically there's a very strong scientific algorithm play on the background. So it's not just something which looks good. It's something which plays equally well scientifically. So there's a lot of artificial intelligence also in our platforms, which on our products, which actually gives them an edge over the market competition we have right now. So and one of the other things is, of course, we do it very fast. So we are a VR content development company essentially, and ultimately trying to pivot into a direction of being an authoring tool as well, and in the future. So there's going to be a lot of tech which of course is going to happen in this space, and VR, the way I know it, it changes every month. So I think to be at the cutting edge of it, you really need to be at the forefront of your development cycles to kind of make it work. So that's what we're doing. And
so you were part of EduGuild, and as I understand it, so this evening you're also presenting as part of the WIRA cohort. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so what experience have you found from both of those programs in terms of either connecting you with investment or government support, or that network that might be crucial to helping support what you're doing?
I think, first of all, EduGuild has been brilliant for us. I think it was one of the best decisions probably I took to give away equity for the stuff we were getting at that stage. We were very much early stage when we had applied to EduGuild, and we were very much ready for an accelerator. I think that's what they're there for. So when we entered, we got a lot of business connects. We ended up getting a lot of business leads, which is what a startup really needs to start with, because it starts infusing more confidence in the teams as well, because they know that at the end of the day they are developing something which somebody needs, and there's a price tag attached to it. And then of course Investor Connect also happened, but I think since we took care of the business, I think investment kind of followed on its own really. So that, and of course the media attention, just kind of being known that you're doing something, it always helps with PR and marketing. I think EduGuild has done a fabulous job with that for us. That really helped us to get noticed in some of the other things we also did after EduGuild. So as a result of it, we ended up winning close to about, in the same year, 2016 was great for us from the outset. We ended up winning about 6 awards, being Tech Business of the Year, being listed as one of the top 10 AR/VR companies in India, being awarded a government grant fund as well for our work which we are doing in India. So all these things have only happened as a result only after when we had graduated from EduGuild. And I think centerpiece of that was also participating in another competition. Along with EduGuild, I've also taken part in another accelerator, which was run by a US venture capital company called Village Capital. So they were running this program, Education India 2016, which got together 200 of the best education-focused companies out of India, and they selected the 35 out of them. Then they narrowed them down to top 10, and they put them through a 3-month competition, which was a peer-ranked competition. So I'm a company, you're a company, you rank me, I rank you. So it was a 3-month competition. There was a lot of mentorship, a lot of investor connects, and it was more like the Big Brother competition, which runs on the shows.
There's been a lot of networking and making
Absolutely
friends in the run-up to that.
Immense.
If you're peer review.
Yeah, and we ended up winning that competition as well, and that allowed us to get invested upon by Village Capital. So we got American investors now, and things have changed very much. The landscape of our work has changed. But I would say still, the sort of support which you got from EduGuild, that kind of stood strong throughout the program as well, which ended up, which helped me to actually win that program, the Village Capital program as well. And so I think, and government support has come as well. Like we've got some grant funding from the government of India. It's not always easy to get that, knowing our government really, but it's been good as a journey this whole last year.
Obviously, I've spoken to a couple of VR companies today. Are you sort of revenue generating yet? Or you are? Very
much. So I think we've been a bootstrap company. I think we've done significant sales throughout our journey, I think, and we still are making money out of our VR work.
Translating that into the education sector, obviously, certainly from a public funding point of view, not always flush with cash, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
So will you be aiming into the private education sector, or do you have a particular view on how you'd go with that?
I think a bit of both, really. I think I can, the technology we are working with, I think there's a very strong endorsement, let's call it, from the government of India, and some of the policies which they are running, like Skill India mission, in which they want to train 400 million youth by 2022. Now that ain't going to happen if you don't have good quality infrastructure. And if you have VR as a technology, why would you spend on all that infrastructure? So I think there's going to be a strong play on the education side, and we are working a lot with the government. So there's a lot of public focus we're trying to do. Private, of course, yes. To make it a revenue generating company, we would look at the private institutes as well. And also, but I think in general, bypassing both private and public, now being invested upon by Village Capital and Michael and Susan Dell Foundation also, we're more like focusing on the impact side. So for us, impact matters.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we want to raise our next 2 rounds of funding by being classified as an impact-focused company, so that impact funds invest in us more and more, and they feel that we are creating that impact at the ground level. That's where I see the vision of the company also kind of going along.
And if people listening in want to find out more, are you on Twitter or?
Yeah, very much, very active. In fact, I just tweeted about this event a couple of hours back.
Okay, and what's the handle?
It's my name, Raman_Similanis.
Okay.
That's my Twitter handle, and Facebook, I'm there as well. I think 99% of my posts are all about the company as well, because I'm passionate about it. And of course, I'm LinkedIn as well. I'm there. So yeah, I'm very much reachable.
And good luck this evening.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Very nervous.
Don't be too nervous. Nervous is good though if you channel it right.
Well, it's all about getting into the flow. Once I'm in it, I'll just get into the zone and let's see.
Perfect. Well, lovely to meet you.
Certainly, and same here. Thanks for having me as part of this conversation.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm here with Charles McIntyre from EdTech X.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we were just swapping notes about what a busy week it is this week with Education World Forum, and then this event here, Education Innovation Conference, BET. And I suppose you're also planning for the run-up to South by Southwest Edu.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's exciting. I mean, it feels like you're right. A lot of people in town for BET, and as you say, then we've got the fun of going to Austin, which at least I think will probably be a little bit warmer than it is here.
Yeah.
And we are showcasing EdTech companies from Europe and from Asia this year. So last year we just brought over companies from Europe, and because of the success of the event that we had in Asia, we're now bringing over 3 or 4 companies from Asia and putting them all together to showcase them to the kind of US community, which will be really interesting.
And what kind of companies have you got? So what type of solutions they offer?
Well, it's interesting because there's a variety from people involved in kind of the analytics and adaptive part of the market, through to looking at content, through to also what's I think increasingly intriguing, this whole area of kind of online tutors and a blended solution of both technology but incorporating the kind of face-to-face part of it. So for us, there's some really interesting mixes coming out of both Asia and Europe. So in Asia, there are businesses like iTutor Group, who I'm sure you've come across, who are growing very fast in their own regions, but have this kind of combination of kind of online tutor and content. And particularly in the kind of the K-12 space, but increasingly also in the corporate space, that's becoming a really exciting area.
And so your dual roles, so your other hat on with IBIS Capital.
Yeah.
So in terms of investing in EdTech, are there particular, the age-old question, people want to know, where you're investing and what you look out for and that kind of thing?
Well, you've caught me slightly off guard, but in the sense that that as of, I think it will be Friday of this week, we'll be announcing our next thing that we've just invested into.
Okay.
And I will happily tell you on the nose that day, so you have the news. But it's very exciting. I've just come back from having just signed the agreements, and so that will take us into a whole new area of a little bit kind of linked into the kind of online tutoring that I've talked about, but much more in the corporate space. And what fascinates us is really this whole link into lifelong learning and what's happening in terms of businesses and how they're looking after their employees. And I think that's one of the big changes that we're starting to see, is that historically, that there was some in-house training of staff, but not very sophisticated, and it was very classroom based. And suddenly now with technology, companies have really woken up to how they can educate and develop their employees and staff. And so that's an area we've just invested into and are very excited about what's going to happen there.
Interesting. Okay, I'll look out for that on Friday.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I know in terms of MOOCs, in terms of where the actual monetization is happening, that kind of reflects what you've just said in terms of corporate training and actually some of the larger blue chips taking on these MOOC courses for in-house training and retention of their best staff as well.
Yeah, no, you're right, and MOOCs are interesting. I think the challenge within that environment is the kind of the mix between something that is massive and open, so by definition is quite general, to then looking at specific needs that individual corporates have, because obviously they have different requirements of their staff than one organisation to another, but also they're keen to differentiate themselves from other organisations. So if they can put in place a better form of training or a more interesting and engaging form of training, that's going to make them stand out from their competitors and other people.
Okay, well, thank you very much,
No,
Charles.
my pleasure.
And I'm delighted to now be here with Cedric Haverbeek.
Yeah.
How would you pronounce that?
Haverbeek. It's a very Dutch name, actually.
Co-founder of Adorable.
The team is completely remotely organized. So, for example, our lead programmer is from Russia. I have an artist in Italy, one in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Gabe, my co-founder, he is based in the US. He spent a while in San Francisco, but eventually moved back to Santa Barbara because he found the EdTech atmosphere a little bit stronger actually in Santa Barbara than in San Francisco. That's how we're organized. So actually, Gabe, which is my co-founder, is the only one that I met physically in real life from the entire team.
Others could be complete fabrications, and you would never know. But does that mean that you're relatively recently founded, or?
No, actually not. We've been at this for about 2 years already.
Okay.
So Gabe and myself, we met online. Gabe at the time just finished his thesis where he used the likes of Second Life and so on to do some research on the power of virtual worlds for education. And at the end of his thesis he concluded okay, there's definitely some potential in virtual worlds for education, but there's no tool which is purely focused on education. I want to build this. And then at that moment I was traveling around the world looking for a remote opportunity. Mm-hmm. And then there was this person that posted somewhere on Odesk at the time, which is now Upwork. It's an online freelancer platform.
Oh, yeah, I know it well.
So he posted, I want to build virtual worlds. And then I replied and I said, look, although I might not be able to build all of it, I do know how to lead the team that could build it. So I'm interested. And then one thing came to another, and a couple of months later we founded a company together, and now here we are.
So in a nutshell, what is Adorable?
In a nutshell, it's virtual worlds for education. So while now for online education there are already possibilities to do online education like video chat, we argue that there's a more engaging possibility, which is avatar-based online education. It is for synchronous learning. Because, for example, with video chat, you're visually reminded that you're not in the same environment, while in an avatar-based environment where you see your avatar, which is in the same room as the other avatars, you get this sense of togetherness. And this and a couple of other factors, which comes from the research that Gabe did, add to the engagement factor of an online session.
And what uptake have you had with, I'm guessing you're trying to work with schools, is that right?
Yeah, so actually at the moment we're running our Pioneer program. Actually it's the second launch that we do. We relaunched. Our first launch was back in December 2015, where we basically said, here are virtual worlds for education, have a go. And although we got like some initial traction, we got to about 900 teachers who were trying it out. In general, the friction and the change management was a bit too overwhelming for most of the teachers. So what we did then now in October 2016 is we relaunched and we turned it around. We said like, okay, apply to be a pioneer. Motivate how you think that you could use a virtual world for your teaching. And if we accept you, then we'll really take you to a guided program to help you make this work for your lessons. And the uptake that we've had since then is, I think now we're at about 315. So we had about 10 to 20 new teachers per year, and it's pretty nice actually. We get a lot of positive press. The teachers themselves, the pioneers themselves, they talk about us at conferences. They're really supportive, and that's really nice.
And what's the kind of business model behind it as well? So, I mean, and also in terms of sort of situational or scenario-based approach to it. So, would it be a teacher who, you get in the classroom, you kick off by jumping into sort of subject matter through this experience, or would it be outside of the classroom? How does that work?
Well, in the ideal situation, it's like online education, everybody sitting at their own place. So it's a bit, we practice what we preach, as sort of say, so our team is also all over the place. And typically you would have somebody sitting at home behind his computer, and because a lot of online education, you don't need synchronous. I mean, there's tons of courses online where you can just do individual learning, but at a certain moment it's interesting to come together. For example, to have discussions or a kind of mentoring. There's always a moment where it makes sense to come together and have a joint moment. So basically, that is the way that you would use it. And what we see now, because we are learning as we are going, that mostly for distance learning and for technology integration, actually, those are like the biggest interest of our pioneers. We have some others like looking at STEM and so on, but those are the most like language learning in a distance setting.
And you mentioned Second Life before, and I also used to work in the events industry, and there was always this big idea that, when Second Life came out, that it was going to cannibalise face-to-face events because people would just dive into this kind of virtual events world, and it never really happened. Because I think people still, there's still extreme value in connecting face to face. So, what would you say to things like the demise of Second Life and that kind of experience? Like, why would this work in an educational setting?
Well, the thing is that one of the things that we do is that we really are building a virtual world for education. So my biggest critic of whatever we create is my co-founder Gabe, who's been a teacher himself. So when we come up with something and he is like, nah, I wouldn't care as a teacher, well, then it's simple, then we don't do it. So I think what we're doing different is that we have this really strong focus on what would work for a teaching environment, and because we work so hard on how it would work for our teachers and really listening to our users, I do think we have a shot this time. I mean, it's simple things like, for example, our worlds are private. You don't want your kids to be online somewhere and some random people walking into the environment and start talking to the kids or to the students that you're talking to. So that's one of the things. For example, at the moment, the animations, the things that your avatar can do is raise a hand and sit down, like other animations that would be available in Second Life or things that are not available in our environment. So, and the part of the virtual world is one part of it. It also allows us, and that's a bit what we're also now more and more exploring, is to curate a little bit what we make available to the teachers. So, for example, in the partnerships that we build, you'll be talking to Raman later on, but that's an example of somebody that is creating interesting environments which could be interesting for our teachers. So what we do is, okay, maybe we can use a lab environment and easily make that available to the teachers. And then if there's a teacher that wants to use a lab environment, then we have one available. So even where in a Second Life you would have obviously also a lot of environments, we kind of say, okay, you're interested into, for example, more language learning or more history. Well, we are talking to that specific partner who has cultural heritage models, so maybe you should talk. So it's a bit of curation as well.
Partnering with people like museums and their content, that kind of thing.
You actually literally give one of the things that we're developing now. So actually, we've been talking to another company which is called Biblio. What they do is they do content surfacing actually, and our take.
Mads.
Yes, yeah. And what they do very well is that, for example, if a museum has 600,000 pieces, 80% of that would be in the basement. And if we have a virtual world where it's easy for teachers to arrive into our world, and then it's easy to bring up the relevant pieces of a specific museum, and it's a win-win situation.
Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Don't forget you can subscribe at iTunes or Stitcher, you can rate and review at iTunes, and you can leave your comments via @PodcastEdTech on Twitter or via speakpipe.com/the EdTech Podcast. Have a great week and see you back here next time for the first of our Bet EdTech Trends episodes.